Good morning, everyone. Today is Monday, the 25th of September, 2023. My name is Jeff Hutchison. I am the Director of Advocacy and Public Policy for TESOL International Association, and coming to you this morning just to provide you an update on U.S. federal policy as it relates to the English language teaching profession and multilingual learners of English. This is a little bit of a follow-up on what we have been focused on for the 118th Congress. Wanted to make sure that you were updated, especially as we are ending the summer, heading into the fall for what could be a contentious political season. So for this update, just to give you a quick overview, we'll be looking at the appropriations, where we are in that process, as well as the bills that we have been supporting, and an update on the deferred action for childhood arrivals. So wanted to make sure that everyone is updated on that and what is happening and what you can do as an advocate yourself to affect U.S. policy. So very quickly on appropriations, you may recall if you attended the summit this past June, the process for the budget, U.S. federal budget, is to begin in mid to late spring, February, March. The president puts his or her proposal in. Then the Congress takes that proposal up. Both the Senate and the House have their appropriation bills that they put forth, really focused upon the discretionary spending, of which education is a major part. Then by September 30th, they have submitted their bills together, and they are in agreement, submitted the bill to the president. He signs them, and then the government can continue on working as it should on November 1st, which is the beginning of the fiscal year for the U.S. government. That's how it's supposed to work. But if you've been watching the news of late, you may realize that that is not how things have been going. Matter of fact, at the end of last week, Speaker McCarthy adjourned on Thursday the House. The House has yet to pass its appropriations bill. The Senate has already done its due diligence in passing its appropriations, but the House is still far off. And we're headed for, most likely, hopefully, is a continuing resolution. We'll talk about the worst case scenario in just a moment. But how does that impact education, where we are and what we're looking at? So back in May, you may recall, there was a debate about the debt ceiling, about being able to continue to fund the government. And an agreement was reached back in May with Congress and the president that put discretionary spending at caps for fiscal year 24 and fiscal year 25. These caps were right at or below what we're looking at in fiscal year 23. And as such, the appropriations committees, respectively, in the House and the Senate, had to come up with a way to keep the spending, the discretionary spending, within that cap. Now, what that has materialized, you can see in this, it's expressed here in this chart. The Senate, I'll start with the Senate side first, just because that was the good news. When we have caps that are at or below the prior or current fiscal year, the best you can hope for is level spending. We obviously would like to have increased spending to keep up not only with inflation, but the number of MLEs, or multilingual learners of English, that continue, the numbers continue to rise in the United States. But unfortunately, the best we could hope for really is level spending. And that's what the Senate essentially did across the board. For Elementary Secondary Education Act, for the PK through 12, Title 1A, which is a huge chunk of the education discretionary spending, and impactful to MLEs. There was an increase of $175 million. Title 1C for Migrant Ed, again, level spending. Title 2, which goes to professional development, was level spending. And Title 3, which is directly for English language acquisition and directly to MLEs, was a slight increase of $7 million. Now, obviously, that $897 million for fiscal year 23 is not where it should be. Ideally, we should be about 1.9 or 2 billion, well above that, just to keep up with the rate of inflation and the number of MLEs in the United States. And then for adult ed, level spending was reached by the Senate for Title II of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, which is what we call the Adult Education Family Literacy Act. That's Title II of WIOA. And Higher Education Act, a slight increase there for the teacher quality partnerships, which encourages higher education institutions to partner with local education agencies to grow your own and have more individuals go into the profession. So that was encouraging. That's the right side. What was not encouraging is what the House had come to. Again, keep in mind the House is yet to vote full committee on this. So these are on the subcommittee appropriation. What was passed forward from the subcommittee for education is dismal. You can see an 80% decrease to Title I, almost $15 billion decrease. Title II and Title III completely eliminated, and it's very concerning, obviously, for Title III. Fortunately, for adult education, that was level spending, and eliminated the Higher Education Act teacher quality partnership programs, and a substantial decrease for the Office of Civil Rights out of the Department of Education. So all these are very concerning, what the House is proposing. Now, of course, Speaker McCarthy put everyone on leave for Friday, and I don't think they're supposed to come back until tomorrow. But that gives you time to continue to petition your member of Congress to support education, specifically for Title III or for AEFLA or for Higher Education Act, whichever space that you are most interested in working in. But ideally, we'd love for you to voice your support for funding all of education, if not level spending, at least even a little bit of an increase would be encouraged there. So what does that mean for us? Well, if we go forward, again, just a reminder, that's the process it's supposed to be. President proposes a budget, Senate and House have their appropriations, they come to an agreement, submit it to the president signs it into law, everything goes on. Well, best case scenario, most likely, is we're looking for a continuing resolution. Now, that was a little bit more promising last week, but there continues to be debate amongst the Republican side of the House as far as how that continuing resolution will go, and especially the impact upon discretionary spending as well as defense spending. And one of the agreements that came up, there would have been an 8% reduction on the discretionary spending across the board. Now, what that means for continuing resolution is that the funding would continue as it is, but they made adjustments with that. But even that was not agreed upon. Now, the reality is, whatever the House is going to come out, if it is that, well, I'll use the word draconian in its cuts into spending, the Senate, democratically held, controlled Senate, is not going to agree to it. And the president most likely will not sign anything that comes out like that. So what's that going to lead to? Well, we've been down this road before, but it will be a government shutdown. That remains to be seen what the impact will be there. We don't know what agencies will be impacted. All agencies will be impacted. There's a lot happening this week. Let me just put it that way. We'll see by the end of the week whether we hopefully go into a continuing resolution. I know there's been some talk of the House passing its full appropriations and the House and the Senate coming to an agreement, but with only a few days left in the fiscal year, that seems quite impossible. Continuing resolution might still be some hope, but most likely we are headed towards a government shutdown. Matter of fact, I've read that some of the members of Congress have already prepared for that in making sure that their staff members are going to have some type of payment during that shutdown. So it's still up in the air. So a lot's going to happen this week. Keep your eyes on the ball, but you have some time to begin to petition your members of Congress if you haven't already. And if you have, please petition again. I'll talk more about that here in just at the end. But very quickly, some other things that are also happening in Congress. I mean, I've been talking about bad news. There is good news in Congress. There's some excellent bills that are out there that do impact the ELT profession, impact MLEs, and support at all levels, PK through 12 and adult ed. Just listed these. You can go to our Advocacy Action Center and read more about these. Well, one of the ones that I personally like is the Fluent Act. Representative Grijalva out of Arizona has put this forth. It's the Families Learning and Understanding English Together Act, which directs grants towards the families of English learners, putting it into literacy programs there for them. So excellent program encompassing the whole family and supporting there. You can read more about the other bills there as well, but I will reference, when you go to our Advocacy Action Center, you can read more about those particular bills and what they have in them. But I do want to highlight the two down at the bottom. Well, actually the three at the bottom. One is the Strengthening Research in Adult Education Act. That one encompasses more than just English learners. It's the whole of it. LA, Title II of WIOA. It's the old adage of as the tide rises, every boat comes up with it. So here you're supporting adult education, especially for digital and information literacy, excuse me, and the research that goes into that to improve adult education programs. So ask your support for that. Now, the last two have to do with immigration to a certain degree. The last one, the Afghan Adjustment Act, both in the House and the Senate, is one that supports the Afghan evacuees that have come into the U.S., providing them a track for permanent residency, something that's lacking right now with the backlog. As well, it provides support for the efforts for those evacuees for those who wished to evacuate but were unable to. And that is something that is sorely needed right now. So if you could voice your support for that. And then the one not near the bottom there, but or not at the bottom, but near the bottom, the Dignity Act of 2023. I would love to tell you that all of the ails of our immigration system would be addressed by Congress, but I don't see anyone who is a pundit out there doesn't see it. Anyone who's a member of Congress doesn't see it either. But there is out there a comprehensive immigration reform reform bill that does have bipartisan support. I would encourage you to look at that, see about some of the key initiatives in that does go to support, especially undocumented, the backlog of asylees, all of which, of course, do impact the learners that we support here in the U.S. So I encourage you to go read more about that. So while we may not have comprehensive immigration reform, that does not mean you sit back and bemoan the situation. You still continue to go forward. Let your voice be heard about the need for it and the support for our learners. And lastly, I just want to touch upon DACA. You may have heard a couple of weeks ago, actually about a week and a half ago, the federal judge out of Texas again found that the deferred action for childhood arrivals found it illegal. It's not the first time that has happened in the court. The reason for that is the DACA, the executive order back in 2012 from Obama, was not a legislative solution to support those individuals who arrived as minors and were undocumented, who have since grown up and have known only the U.S. as their home. Because of that, it has been through a lot of court challenges, and a legislative solution is needed. And there are two bills right now that are, one in the Senate and one in the House, very similar but not exact. One is the DREAM Act in the Senate and the American Dream and Promise Act in the House. Interestingly, the American Dream and Promise Act did pass in the 117th, but it has to go through the same process again because there was not a companion piece that went through the Senate side. So hopefully, with your support, we can continue to move forward on these. I will say right now that the outlook does not look good for either pieces of legislation, but that does not, I don't want to deter you from taking action on that. Please reach out to your representatives and support your learners and support the other sport dreamers, if you will, in the United States here. So very quickly, just to recap what we need support of, what you can do. Appropriations is the number one. Make your voice heard to fund education, specifically Title III, specifically AEFLA, Title II of WIOA, Title III of Elementary and Secondary Education Act for English learners, and Title II of WIOA for the Adult Ed Family Literacy Act for our adult education participants. That is key. Please make your voice heard for that. We do not want to see anything that the House is proposing in its deep spending cuts for education. That is not something that would, in our view, be beneficial for learners. Matter of fact, the Department of Education has estimated if those cuts were to go through, I think there would be upward to 200,000 teachers impacted by that. And that's not to count the hundreds of thousands of learners that would be impacted there as well. So please make your voice heard. Go to our website. The link is right down there at the bottom. It's tsol.org/advocacy/action-center. There we have all of the bills that I just went over, as well as a few others, and the appropriations. Specifically for the House. Please review those and please take action on each of those And if you don't have time for each of them, at least do the ones that are most important to you and most impactful to you. And make sure you add your story. What is the impact of that legislation? What is the impact of that appropriations for you, for your school, for your community, for the families, for the learners? Make your voice heard and begin on your journey, your own little personal journey of advocacy and support. So thank you. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your Monday and hope to have some good news by Friday, but we'll see how that goes.